The opinions and statements made by the guests of the Success in Practice podcast are their own, and I do not endorse or accept responsibility for their positions. Any information given by myself or the guests is educational in intention and not to be taken as medical advice. If you choose to act on the content involved in the podcast, you do so at your own risk. Okay, welcome to the Success in Practice podcast. Today I'm joined by Angie Bruce. Angie is an osteopath and an educator. She has been practicing since 2004 after graduating from the UWS Osteopathy program. My first encounter with Angie was in my first class on the first day of university. We attended that together and we continued throughout that whole 5-year span, which was a pleasure for me. We studied together, and she was one of the people that I really wanted to catch up to. Right? I really looked up to her and a couple of other people in that class, and it's partly one of the reasons why I want to speak to Angie today. But at the time, she was living in Sydney. Angie began practicing at clinics in Sydney, and then moved to Canberra. She then moved to Mount Tamborine, and then eventually settling in Melbourne with her husband and osteopath Mark Cooper, and her now teenage children. They together bought and operate the Fairfield Osteopathic Clinic. Angie is also a clinical supervisor at RMIT at their osteopathy program as well. Angie has a keen interest in pain science, pelvic pain, and nerve manipulation, and has achieved extended practice recognition in pain management. Angie, it's always a pleasure to have a chat to you. Welcome to the podcast. I'm really grateful you've taken the time, especially at this late hour, to do this. I know that it's been a long day for you, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Sammy. Good on you for doing it. I appreciate
It
efforts.
It makes it a lot easier when I talk to people like you, Angie. It's always a pleasure. It's always great to catch up, and I guess we'll talk about osteopathy. We'll throw some things at the wall and see what sticks. I think today the best value we can give people is to really explore your journey from a mature age student back in the day to your early years in practice, and then maybe look at your development into a more of an experienced practitioner. I'd like to draw some lessons there, especially navigating things like the physical demands on your body, and also in practice, and also your adventure with building a family, also, and continuing to develop your clinical practice. So, and I see that as an adventure. So, I'll call it that. You're recognised also as an extended practitioner by Osteopathy Australia in pain management. So I'd like to explore what you're doing there and your experience with that whole process and how that's helped you. And also, you've become a clinical supervisor at RMIT. And so I want to ask you about some of the challenges you've seen students go through over the last 4 to 5 years, especially relating to the way COVID impacted education over there at RMIT. And maybe look at the current landscape of allied healthcare in the marketplace, speak specifically about osteopathy, and then maybe have a look at some of the challenges and opportunities ahead of us and what your thoughts on those are. There's a lot there. It sounds like a lot to cover, but yeah, it sounds like there's a lot to cover.
Well, it's been 20 years, so
I know we're up for our 20-year reunion.
Yep.
Yeah, it's been that long, and it's been great, hasn't it?
Yeah, I do wonder how many. Like, I feel like there are a lot of us still in practice.
Yeah, I think
I know a few have stepped out, but
I think we were privileged, I think, and I'm grateful for what we had, and I think it's helped us, especially those foundations. They've really helped us. It's sustained us through probably some difficult times in practice, and when you have difficult patients and difficult things. And I think, I'm grateful that I received what I received back in those days, and we'll discuss that as well, I guess, today. So anyway, we'll get to discussing all things osteopathy soon enough. But firstly, I just want to talk about you growing up, Angie. From what I understand, your parents were professionals and high achievers.
They were.
You had a very solid education.
Yes.
First, Tell us about that, and in what ways do you think that environment, the environment you were raised in, either helped or maybe held you back in your career as an osteopath and as a
Mm.
business owner?
Oh, there's a lot there. So yeah, my dad was a lawyer, and my mum went to uni. She was actually a full-time mum, but did a lot of kind of volunteering and worked in communications kind of on and off as well, but mostly just a full-time mum. I had a very privileged education, and then went to, I did an arts degree before osteopathy at Newcastle University, which was an amazing experience, and introduced me to the social sciences as opposed to allied health. And but that was not for me, and then went into osteopathy. Not
So,
quite on a whim,
what
but
was it? Was it a background in journalism? Do I
yeah.
remember that correctly?
So it was in communications.
Communications, right?
Yeah, so public
Because
relations.
you spent a lot of time correcting my English in the first year of.
Sorry, so bad. Yes, so I am an excellent sub editor. But it's interesting. I'm nearly 50, and I think I'm not as sharp as I used to be in terms of spelling. And it's amazing. I think automation and computers have dulled my talents. So I'd probably be a far more pleasant person to be around in
Well,
learning now, Sammy.
you probably care less about it.
Maybe, yeah, because I find it harder to get right all the time.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it was, yeah. I mean, but you were saying that you would like saying you wanted to catch up, and there is a difference, like I'd already done 3 years of tertiary education, and you'd come straight from uni, as the other people straight from uni had.
High
And
school, you mean?
yeah, sorry, straight from high school. And yeah, so I knew about essays, and I knew how to write stuff, and I knew how to look stuff up at the library, and that's probably how the education prepared me for.
You knew how to ask questions. I just had trouble asking a decent question, like a question that was just formulated properly, and you guys you would ask a question. I'm like, why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, but that's what you do when you're a beginner in that kind of environment, and you're like, how do they know? What are they? Yeah. And you see it with your own kids now, for example, or I see it with people who don't know how to navigate the health system. They don't know what to ask. They don't know what to ask specialists. And you spend a lot of time advocating for your patients to help them ask the right questions.
Right. Yeah, that's a good segue there. About your education and growing up, how do you think that's affected what you do now in terms of maybe business more so than practice? Like, is that, was there anything in terms of your experience as a young adult, growing up in Sydney, your kind of education, was that helpful, or was it, do you find that, has that given you an advantage at all?
Well, I'm a pretty privileged human, so that's given me an advantage. I recognize that. And I guess it's in both directions, like ultimately my dad was a lawyer, owned his own business. So I knew it was possible to own your own business, but I don't think I strived particularly for it. I was always happy to be a really great employee or subcontractor. Because I think it gives you different freedoms to be a subcontractor, rather than a business owner. It was just by accident that Mark and I ended up purchasing Fairfield, but I'm very grateful for that experience as well. I've learnt so much, but it's complicated to run a small business and keep up with everything. It's an entirely different part of what we do.
It is, and you're completely right there that it does give you certain freedoms to just stay as a subcontractor or as an employee, because you get to leave all that business stuff at work and just go home and focus on your clinical aspect and
or take other opportunities. There are
it's
other
not for everyone.
opportunities.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. Business isn't for everyone.
No,
and that's definitely, and you can make a great income as well just being a subcontractor. You don't have to have a business, especially in today's market where there's a high demand for osteopaths. It's just okay. Well, I guess moving on then, you entered osteopathy in 1999 after completing a communications degree.
Yeah.
And I think like I said earlier, you had a background in journalism. In terms of actually studying and wrapping your head around osteopathy and the actual technical components of what it took to study in that particular program, the osteopathy program, did that help you? Did your previous degrees, your previous
Oh,
experience kind of help you?
definitely. Like I knew what it took, and I was probably, I mean, you met me in first year. Like I was a zealot. I was so excited to be in the health space and anatomy and learning and doing science and something so different that I had never studied that hard at anything ever before. And it was so interesting, and it piqued my interest and has kept my interest for 20 years. So that says a lot. So yeah, I hit the ground running for sure, having done a different degree.
Okay, and let's kind of fast forward a little bit. Were there any speed humps? What were the big speed humps for you along the way in that program? Like, where did you feel like, I think initially in first and second year, you self-described you were a zealot and you really focused and studied hard. What part of the degree or what part of that particular program do you feel like the playing field gets leveled out? Like at what point do you feel like, look, we're all on the same level here now?
Yeah. Oh, I think, I mean, and you probably might be surprised to hear it, but I always felt like I was having to catch up to other people too. So, and that might just be more in the manual dexterity side of things. So there's always those two components and it's why osteopathy is so interesting, is you can be getting high distinctions in something, but the application of actually dealing with a human is very different. So there's the communication aspect, which I was probably okay with as well because I was older. But then just having your hands on people and
Yeah, the tactile aspect, yeah.
totally, but also just like this manual skills, like
Mm.
it takes practice, and you have to do it a lot of times to be good at something.
Yeah.
So that's probably like as soon as we hit clinic, I was like, oh, this is a bit different.
Yeah. Well, it's like, now it's a level playing field and let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. So then I was lucky to work as a massage therapist for an osteopath, and as you did as well.
Yes.
In my fourth year, and that was terrific. So I loved that.
Yeah, that particular experience is, I think, so valuable. You can't put a price on it. All right. So in that osteopathy program at UWS, we attended pretty much the same classes over the 5 years. Although I feel our pathway through probably felt very different.
I'm sure. Yeah.
How did you feel about the program itself, and what were some of the things you were happy about, and some of the things that you think could have been done better? Now that you're an educator yourself, I mean, hindsight is a good thing, but it's not a bad thing to kind of reflect back, because I think it teaches us for the future and see what things can be done better. So what do you think some of the great things were about that? And what were some of the things that could have been done better, especially given now that you've got experience at RMIT?
Well, I probably like UWS Campbelltown, where we went, it felt a bit like a high school, rather than, and I'd come from a big, amazing University of Newcastle, big classes and good lecturers and stuff, and so then coming to UWS felt a bit more like a high school, smaller, and maybe not as schmick, but I think what more than made up for it was access to amazing people in the program, and just small classes and so many hours, like prac hours. Like I feel like we were at uni a lot, compared to what they do now, and especially that the manual therapy side of things there was a lot more in our program, I think. So, and I think at the time we were all like, especially all of us who'd done a degree perhaps before, were like, oh my gosh, this is so disappointing, or But then on reflection, I think I just go, oh my gosh, we were so lucky to have the people we had access to what they were trying to do. And I feel quite, I have a lot of gratitude for the program. But at the time,
yeah.
And then at the time I was also like, why does this have to be 5 years? This is ridiculous. Surely we could just get this done in 4, which I think now you can.
Yeah, you probably could.
Yeah.
So, well, look, I was talking to Troy Fleming last night,
Mm-hmm.
and we kind of talked about how we would show up on weekends, where there'd be guest lecturers and guest speakers that would come in, and we'd all be showing up kind of a bit, sleep deprived and showing up there early on a Saturday and Sunday morning, because we had somebody coming in who was going to teach us something new.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something that's available today to, I think it's a lot harder just due to red tape and bureaucracy or whatever it is. And so that was so good. And that was so, I'm so grateful that we could do that.
Yes.
I just can't imagine having a course where you couldn't do that,
Yes.
And it also speaks to the confidence, I think, of practitioners like, that went through at our time, because we got to see people actually put osteopathy into action and get a result from it. And just like new graduates are going through now, we were new graduates at one point that didn't really have experience, but we just look back at the people that did that and go, well, if they could do it, we could do it, and we just did what they did for a little while until we kind of picked it up.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but it was very much like fake it till you make it. Just pretend that you know what you're doing, and then eventually you know what you're doing. That was quite good advice for a kind of nervous person.
I guess we don't want to fake it. I think there's good physiology behind what we do.
Oh, so, no, I mean just like that. If you don't really know why you're doing something, you can always just like do some soft tissue on their back and it'll be all right.
Yeah. I understand that, but I think also you can, even that, I think that we can really teach the students about the physiology behind what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Well, if they understand that, hopefully they get that from uni.
Yeah, well, we'd hope so. So we'll discuss that in a minute. All right. So your early years as a new graduate, what were they like? Tell us about practicing then, like literally just going out that first week of practice, having your first few patients booked in. What were you thinking? What was going through your head?
I didn't sleep very well the first year. I think first year out for me was really pretty stressful, the whole shebang, because I just didn't feel good enough. And like when I went into practice, I was like, well, why would someone want to see me when they could see I worked with Jenny Paul and Amy Corcoran, like 2 amazing practitioners. And that, so I always just felt like, oh, well, why would anyone want to see me? And then so I was really grateful to even be in that situation. But in the same breath, not sleep the night before, I had a whole raft of patients going, oh my gosh, what am I doing? Will I be able to do it? So I had a lot of self-doubt in that first year, for sure.
How did you overcome that? So let's first things first. How did you overcome the bit about, oh my God, why would they see me versus seeing somebody with 20 years experience?
Well, that lasted forever. Not forever, but it always kind of sticks around a little bit until you become like, does it always stick around? Not quite, but like as a novice practitioner, like it's okay. It's humbling. You're a novice practitioner, right? So maybe it would have been easier just being reminded it's okay, you're a novice practitioner. But how did I get through it? I just did, as you keep just push through like everything else, and it gets a bit easier. And then the second year out, and I remember Jenny Paul saying it's just good to have 2 years under your belt, kind of thing as well.
Why do you think it gets easier? I mean, you said it just does. No, you said it just gets easier, like that anxiety about having someone who's more experienced than you. Why would people see you? You just said, well, it gets easier.
Well, because I think you figure out who you, like what you have to offer. Probably.
Right.
Yeah.
And you get results, right?
Well, I think you get results look, I am shocked that people got better when, in first year out.
Well,
Like,
that
that's
reaction.
amazing, right?
Well,
Like,
yes, it is. That reaction belongs to you. It's what the patient feels that counts. That's why they come back to see you. I mean, they feel like they got better. You
yeah,
might be
that's right.
shocked, but you don't have to tell them that.
No, I mean, I probably wasn't shocked at the time because I was still a believer at
Right.
that moment. Like, surely this is going to work. And then, but I look back now and go, oh my gosh, I was super green. I
Yeah.
was so green, and actually also doing things that I wouldn't dream of doing today, like happily cracking necks all over the place. And, I'm actually far more uh, cautious in the way that I treat now.
All right.
Oh,
We'll discuss that in a minute. Now, in those days, you said that you felt some anxiety about having some more experienced practitioners ahead of you, but you also mentioned that I think that you were worried that people weren't, or that they were seeing you, and that why would they see you? Like
yeah.
what's the purpose? So, was that your biggest challenge, overcoming that, or were there actual technical challenges for you? Did you find, technique wise, were there technical challenges there that
Oh, yeah,
were in front of
probably
you?
technical challenges as well. Like, I don't know if maybe this never happened to you, Sammy. I don't know. But like one week I could do lumbers and then suddenly I couldn't do lumbers.
Yeah.
And then,
Right.
oh, I can do a lift and now I can't do a lift. And what the heck? Why is that, why is that happening? Or just, yeah, sometimes not. I guess one thing that I didn't have at the time, particularly coming out, was always understanding why I was doing something. I think, like the fake it till you make it. But and that's something I work with my students a lot about. You have to, like, why are you doing something?
Mm.
Why are you doing soft tissue? Why are you doing, and then understanding. And so hopefully if they have that foundation.
When did that ball drop for you? To understand why you're doing something. When was the turning point?
Oh, it took ages, I think, really. I mean, my memory's probably not great in regard to this because I was busy having babies and stuff. But I built that over years. Probably in the first 10 years of practice, I was really understanding about why I was doing something. And I'm a dedicated, curious learner,
Mm.
and have never stopped. And so I kind of built that for myself.
And given that you said it took you about 10 years to kind of slowly, build that in your head.
Yeah.
Do you think, if you know now what it would take to make the ball drop, do you think that could be taught in less than 10 years? Do you think we can teach people
Oh,
why we're doing something?
yeah. So I'm a big advocate. Well, and I noticed on your website for Success in Practice that you offer mentoring.
Mm.
And so I think that we can get people through with mentors. So I think that novice practitioners, so that first, 1 to 3 years, they need a specific kind of mentor. And then as you go into that third and sixth year of practice, and there's an entire like there's a framework for this in other allied health professionals. So like psychology have this where,
Yes, I'm aware of psychology. They
yeah,
do that very well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and that not just supervision, but just like having a mentor. So are you struggling with the business side of things or the manual dexterity side of things, or do you need to debrief about patients? So and then making sure that the two practitioners are aligned, because you can't do that really for your I don't think you can do that for your associates if they're working for you. You can't be a mentor because you've got this conflict around the business side of things.
Mm.
You want them to be busy.
That's an interesting point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a valid point. Yeah, no, you're right. You do want them to be busy. So I guess you want them to be good too. And
But is it like your kind of good, or is it
well,
their kind of good, or
that's
the
right. But
best for the
also,
patient, or what are we looking for here?
yeah, you're right, because I think when I know when students kind of message me, or new grads message me privately and say, "Hey, I'm having this problem," My advice is very almost cutthroat and straight to the point. Whereas I might, with my own associates, I'm a little bit nicer. Yeah, and that's a problem, because I think the ones that don't work for me, that ask me these things just online privately, I feel like they really appreciate. Okay, thank you for just telling me the direct, straight answer. I just needed to hear that. And so sometimes we can kind of be a little, because obviously our associates and the people that work with us, we try to make sure that they're happy. We don't want them to be upset, and so sometimes we water things down. But I think it's better that we don't. Well,
that's why they might need someone external
that's
to
right.
you, and and you need different people when you start. You need and you had Troy and Rob, you had peer support, you had John as a mentor. He was a mentor for a really long time. And then I don't know if you've had a mentor since John, but we tend to go and find different mentors when we need.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. That's a very valid point. And that's why, even with Success in Practice, what I've done is I've set up two separate strands. One program is really set up for people from maybe 0 to 7 years, and the other 5 to 7 years, and the other strand is probably 5 years onwards. And then after that, I mean, you pick the brains of people that have been doing what you want, where you want to get to. So, that's how you find the right mentors. You find the people that are where you want to be, and just go and pick their brains.
Because I've had different ones over the years. I had an amazing supervision group that we just sorted with A.L. Letterman, who's an amazing osteopath in the UK. That was an amazing experience. And I'm doing something recently. The last 6 months, I've been doing an interdisciplinary group, which is super interesting. So,
well, I might ask you about Mr. Letterman in a little while. I want to get on to the next question. As a female practitioner who's kind of not kind of, but you have lasted in this profession, and you continue to practice through, a changing body, having a family, having children. What advice can you give to female practitioners who are likely to share those experiences as they kind of grow into the profession as well? Hello, everyone. I'd like to take a quick moment to thank everyone for watching and listening to the podcast. If you have received value from this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel on whichever platform that you are listening on. If any of the conversations have resonated with you and you feel that I can help elevate your practice, you can find me at successinpractice.net. That is, the Success in Practice program can be found at successinpractice.net. The Success in Practice program is the signature program that takes a practitioner who may be struggling with retaining patients. They may not be certain about building effective treatment strategies, and they may feel somewhat anxious and doubtful about what they are going to do with a patient. And they are not really accelerating in the real world of private practice. It takes this practitioner and it turns their careers right around to the point where the patients have an effective diagnosis and a real treatment plan that they can take home. Patients are happy to book in multiple sessions with you, and they are confident about your abilities. And more importantly, you now have direction and are confident about your own abilities. The program streamlines how you operate as a practitioner. Guys, you should have been taught this at university, but you weren't. You may have been practicing for the last few years thinking there has to be a better way. There has to be a more effective way of engaging with patients and getting them results. Well, there is. And this is what the program delivers. Go to successinpractice.net and check out the options available to you. See where I can help you easily grow your patient list and finally earn the rewarding income that you deserve. For all the information on how you can reach me personally, check out the show notes. Also in the show notes, you'll find a link to the chat transcripts from these podcasts. These are valuable and a wealth of information. I really hope that you're enjoying the podcast. Guys, leave a comment if there's any questions on this episode, and please, don't forget to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the channel. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, I haven't watched Anne's one, but I imagine she had something to say about this too.
I don't think we didn't really go over that.
Oh, didn't you? I remember because I remember Anne saying to me just at uni, just go like, what are you doing? Go and start, put some weight on, woman.
Yes.
Because in 5th year, a few of us ran a half marathon. To distract ourselves from the pain of 5th year. And I was probably at my lightest when I was doing all that running, and yeah, it was I was strong, but not the kind of strong you need for practice. So I think I'm lucky. But I'm pretty fit, and I lift weights. Good. And I had Lee Muddle telling me to lift weights for a long time as well.
Yes.
And actually getting older, I probably heaviest I've ever been, and practice is maybe a bit easier because of that as well.
Yep.
But the other thing is that I didn't work full time. So I worked full time for about 18 months and then had 2 kids and only worked part time through that time. And that was probably good. So and then have only ever really worked hands-on, maybe kind of 3/4 time since then. So maybe that gives me longevity.
Have your patient numbers increased though over the time? Like, you might have only done a certain amount when you were younger, but now being more experienced, you've had more exposure to a larger patient base. Do you see more people now in the shorter amount of time than what you used to see? Maybe in the same amount of time?
No, I think I saw more people in my first year out than I ever have before again. So no, I think I almost I even offer a 45-minute appointment now. So I think I see the same number of people, but maybe for longer.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I still do a half hour, but yeah, my goal isn't to see as many people as possible because I think I would burn out.
Yeah, right. So
physically and mentally and all the things.
I understand that your goal is not to see as many people as possible. But I mean, whilst you've kind of put your table time down, like, say, look, I'm going to be working between 8 and 5 p.m. on this day.
Mm-hmm.
Do you aim to kind of only see a certain amount of people on that day, or do you?
Yes, the maximum number of people I like to see is 8 in a day.
Right. Why are you laughing?
Because I know that's not how you work, Sammy.
That's not for everybody. How I work is not for everybody.
No. So there are different ways to work, for sure.
Yes, there are different ways to work.
Yeah, which is great, right? Like,
of course.
And I attract certain kinds of patients, and you attract certain kinds of patients.
I would happily work at your clinic, and I would happily have you work at my clinic.
Because ultimately, our thoughts.
Ultimately, our thoughts are the same, right?
Yeah,
we're just moving somatic dysfunction out of the way. So, that's not a problem. Whether you take 45 minutes to do it, or 15, or 10, or half an hour, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
So okay.
And I actually have some patients who I'm sure would like your style.
Yeah, I'm sure I've lost many patients that would love your style.
You're like, I just want the gentle person.
I want somebody. Yeah, that's right.
There's room for all of it. Yeah, go tell me. Next question.
So today, when Angie goes into the clinic, what's her day like then? Let's segue into that. You've just told us a little bit about it. Tell us about your day in the clinic. What kind of volume? I mean, you've described that. Sorry about that. But what kind of conditions are you seeing? Are you trying to market yourself, or are you trying to attract a certain type of niche? I know you're a generalist. And you're a great generalist, but do you prefer to see certain types of conditions or patients?
I think I see pain. I do see some sports injuries, for example. I love seeing them because they're great, and they get better on their own. I see a lot of persistent pain. I see, but I do just think I see that, I see everything. I see TMJ, I see migraines and headaches and shoulder pain. And I saw a 74-year-old yesterday who has never had any pain in his entire life until the last 3 weeks, when he got a new van, a courier van, and he just spent way too long just like lifting. It was really high. Yeah. So both his shoulders hurt. So, I see lots of amazing people with lots of different problems. But I will say one thing, and I was like, oh, this is one thing I want to get out there. People have got more complicated since COVID.
Right.
They're bringing me more complicated things.
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you're not the only practitioner that I've talked to that has mentioned that.
Yeah.
I'm seeing that too, and I had a chat to Rosalba Courtney
Oh,
a couple of weeks
lovely
ago.
with Alba. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, she's mentioned the same thing, about long COVID and just multitude of things. But anyway, that's probably a podcast on its own.
Yeah.
Well, outside of your career, then I want to talk a little bit about that. You're a wife to a very, very lucky man.
Oh,
Mark
and
is a
I'm a
very
very
lucky
lucky
man.
woman. Yeah. I
You
think
know,
we feel the same way.
and
Yeah.
and you're a mother to two teenagers. How have you balanced that out over the last 15 years in terms of practice and family? Can you give some advice to women on that scenario?
Well, you need to be married to a man who only also works 3/4 time and then split your days. So like we are ships in the night a lot of the time, because we live in Melbourne without any family support.
Yep.
And so no one can pick up the slack anywhere. And yeah, so we've all just always worked that. So I work 8 till 2 and he'll work 2 till 7,
Yeah.
basically. And
Well, they're pretty decent hours, and they're good that you can do that. That's
yeah.
fantastic.
And I work 5 or 6 days a week doing that.
And he's doing 5 or 6 days a week too?
He always just does 5.
Right.
Yeah, because my 6th day will be at RMIT.
Yeah, he's always been a little bit softer than you. That's
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Um,
Right. You look.
yeah, so that's how I've done it. So I don't know. That's not available to everybody, obviously, but I think that's why a lot of women end up working part-time or potentially part-time as an osteopath.
Well,
Because they
it's
end up taking the
interesting.
lion's share of kids.
It's interesting because I think there's a lot more options out there than just the standard 9 to 5 kind of consulting. I've recently changed my hours. I used to work, from 8 till 5 p.m. and then have a break in between. And now I've changed. I'll do Mondays and Tuesdays. I'll work from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. just a 6-hour block straight. And then on Wednesdays and Thursdays, I'll work from 1 p.m. till 7 p.m. and do a 6-hour block straight. And that I did that because I've got young children and I'd like to take them to school and I'd like to pick them up on other days, and and I've got some other work to do too. I'm doing a lot of work online at the moment, and I've got my business to run as well. It's not just a practice; it's a business that I have to run as well. So it gives me time to kind of do work before and after that. But just
That's
to
awesome. I'm sure they all appreciate that.
yeah, but just to put it out there to people, it doesn't have to be 9 to 5. It doesn't have to be. There's ways around that. And one thing I've learned is that patients will still come and see you.
Yeah.
Like, people will make time if they appreciate what you do. You practice osteopathy, you give them the good stuff, and they'll just keep coming to see you. I think the biggest fear out there is if I change my hours, people will stop seeing me. You might get a maybe 5 or 10% drop off, but you'll pick that up with people that will find those hours better.
Yeah, and some people just can't come and see you, and that's okay. And they know what someone, they'll go and find something else and maybe have a different experience, and it's just good and it's
you
fine.
can't help everyone. Yeah,
No.
that's right. Now you've been recognised as an extended practitioner in pain management.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about? What was the intention there? What was your thought process? And tell us about that.
Well, I did it because I think that people struggle to navigate finding out who to see. And I just wanted to kind of make it a bit clearer for people looking at who to see, that maybe I've got an additional qualification and can help explain and make sense of their pain when it's complicated.
Right. So tell me about that. So when you are recognised as an extended practitioner and even as an advanced practitioner in pain management,
Yep.
are you saying that you're somebody who treats people with complicated pain conditions, or is it? We all see patients who are in pain,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what you're doing, like 99% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, can you explain that to us a little bit more, maybe in terms of why would a person in the general public come and see you versus somebody who's not recognised as a pain management practitioner?
Well, I don't know if they do. That's one thing.
Well, why would they? If they would, like, I mean, why would you want them to?
Because I don't think that people, well, a lot of people, I'm often the first person that's helped someone make sense of their experience.
Right.
Using therapeutic pain education.
Okay.
So, and that's sad, or because they haven't understood it. They've just thought it was inflammation, or they thought it was because they'd, I don't know, kept tearing their back muscle or something. I don't know what they think a lot of the time. But when you build the story for them of their own experience, they're like, oh, thank you. And there's a lot of evidence to say that decreases their experience of pain. So that's got to be a good thing.
All right. I'll go deep diving with you on that in the later section of the podcast when we discuss it with the students. So I want to talk about you're a clinical supervisor at RMIT.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges that students are facing in not only graduating with kind of a baseline of being safe, but also having some kind of framework to be competent? So, I mean, I know that the aim of the university is to graduate safe practitioners, but often the need and the want of the student is to be not only just safe, but have just a good level of competency so that they can go out and practice. And so, what are the challenges that students are faced with in terms of reaching that level of competency at university?
Well, they have to want to. That's
Good
one
point.
thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, you can have two different people. One, I mean, there are a lot of students, 4th and 5th years, who may never have seen an osteopath, have never observed an osteopath, have never taken the time to go and talk to someone about what it might be like in practice. So they're not necessarily going to be competent when they bounce off into practice. And I don't know, sometimes, it's confusing about what they want. Maybe they don't want to be practitioners. And a lot of them don't. So some of them don't practice. They go off and work in allied health in a different way, which is fine as well. Not everybody wants to be hands-on and at the coalface. And what was your question? How do you get competent?
Well, no, the question mainly is around universities want to graduate safe practitioners. That's their aim. But yet students, they're demanding a certain level of competency. I mean, obviously it's hard to come out, with the level of competency of someone who's got 5, 10, 15 years experience, but at least a framework that they can use to actually apply in real world clinical practice. I mean, Angie, you remember when when they went through that massive convoluted process with us at UWS we were sitting there in the first university clinic consultation for 45 minutes trying to take case history. Nobody does that in real clinical practice.
I don't know, Sammy. So sometimes I'll take a clinical history, it'll be at least 40 minutes.
Well, I mean, that's maybe sometimes, but not all the time.
Lots of times, lots of new patients. I'll take a half-hour clinical history.
Okay, sure. A half-hour clinical history, but you've put aside an hour for the treatment. You've put aside an hour for the whole thing.
I have.
Yeah. So, and you can do that, but new graduates coming into maybe a clinic that need them to maybe start off on 45-minute consults, even 1-hour consults, they need to very quickly kind of move on from doing that to being a bit sharper in terms of their clinical history taking and their diagnostics, and then their treatment planning and execution. Yes. And so I guess my question is around, is there a framework in university for them to do that?
Yes.
There is.
I mean, absolutely. But it's hard for them to put it all together in a short period of time and to come up with a diagnosis and work out the examination and the treatment protocol, and then maybe some management. They're just beginners, they're babies at it, and they still need support and help. You know, it is, I wouldn't advise coming out in first year and not being supported in practice by, and that's kind of the role. The very, very few students or novice practitioners coming out would just be ready to roll 100%. And if you simplify it too much, then sometimes there's only one path for them to walk, because there's more than one framework to use in practice. There's, you know, a couple of amazing reductionist frameworks that are there at the beginning and are super useful. And even a protocol for particular conditions can be super useful when you just don't know what step to take. But like you said, you know, 3 to 7 years out, you're reworking it all and making it your own.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess being a supervisor though, when they come to see you, you know, when they walk out of that room and they come to see you,
Yep.
what are there any commonalities you're seeing amongst questions? You know, are students kind of, you know, do you find that they're getting stuck on similar places, or is it all different?
It's all different. And then it depends on who I'm speaking to and their foundational knowledge, which of course in COVID has definitely been disrupted.
Yes.
And also, you know, I've been thinking about this a bit lately because I have a VCE, like a HSE student in my house, and looking at how she learns, which is very interesting. And I've realized that that's probably where COVID interrupted a lot of the learning. That, like, when we were at uni, we didn't have access to the internet. Like, we couldn't look something up. So we had to learn all this stuff and just have it in our brains. And so it meant that we really, really learnt it, and we really had to put it together on the spot. And so if you haven't had to learn like that, I think it's even harder stepping into clinic. And that's partly what's happening with this generation of students, is that they just have always had access to information and haven't had to learn to the degree that we learned it, I think.
So
Anatomy even.
Yeah, they haven't had to chase things. Is that what you're saying? Kind of like chase information and really go deep diving into something to really learn it.
Well, they can chase everyone, like they've chased it, but you don't have to remember it in the same way, like
right.
origin, insertion, action, or the brachial plexus, or like all of that anatomy. You just don't have to learn it, or conditions, because it's just available all the time.
Right. So students aren't learning those, kind of rope learning them and just memorizing them. They don't have to do that anymore.
Well, they do, but I think that it's like, it's potentially just it's a different way of learning because of having access all the time to information. So I'm just wondering if that's kind of what they might find difficult now. In the same way that, like, there's going to be a difference for, let's say I got 100% on an anatomy quiz and Mark, my husband, got 60%, which he didn't. But when you go into clinic, I will have hopefully retained a lot more of that information and then be able to step off into the next thing as well.
Yeah. Do you think, is that endemic though of education, tertiary education in general, or is it something that's, because I mean, you know, you can.
Is it tertiary education? I don't know. Like, I feel like it might just be the automation of education, like ChatGPT, or
is that something we have to be worried about then, as health professionals, as well, osteopaths really? I mean, we're the profession that's being represented at the university, you know, and do we have to be worried about that we're actually making sure that students are coming out knowing the anatomy, knowing the physiology, knowing the brachial plexus, knowing the neurology, and actually knowing it, rather than just kind of learning it and then saying, look, I've got access to this, I'm just going to put it aside and move on to the next thing?
Well, I guess I don't really know, because they learn it and they have to sit really difficult exams still to get there. But I guess I don't know if that information degrades quickly or more quickly, or because we don't have to keep reinforcing it.
Right.
Like, I don't, it's hard to know. We had to keep reinforcing stuff all the time. Like, I carried my big nerd book around for ages. I took it to, my first and second year out in practice. It was still in my bag. It was there as a reference.
Yeah. And so do you find yourself reinforcing these things with students in clinical supervision?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a total broken record. So I'm every single student group I get, I'm always encouraging them to have study groups, make a nerd, folder.
Yeah.
Because it's like, even if you ask the internet a question about what you're seeing, my question as an experienced practitioner is going to be much better than a novice practitioner so I'll get better information back. So you have to know, you have to have a beginning knowledge set, but this wouldn't be limited to osteopathy. Like, this is
I don't think it is.
Like,
I don't think it is.
Airline pilots,
Yeah,
they're not practicing what they're doing.
Yeah, but I mean, it is our profession, so we have to. I mean, airline pilots can look after themselves, and I guess we've got to look after ourselves.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to make sure that the next generation of osteopaths coming through have at least a level of competency that can get them past the first couple of years of practice, so that they can progress. As you said,
I think they will. Like, they do.
Yeah.
They come out, and then they progress. Like, you have to progress because you're seeing people, and hopefully people source themselves a mentor or do some courses. And
Yeah.
like, your education doesn't finish just because you finished.
No.
Like,
No, your education begins once you graduate.
Yeah. And that's okay. Like, it's always hard. Like, I think it's just always hard being a novice practitioner.
Yeah, well, if we make it a little bit easier, it gets harder in other ways. So you're right about that. Okay, looking at the landscape then of osteopathy over the last 20 years. I mean, since we graduated, we said it's a 20-year anniversary this year. What do you see as some of the challenges? We've seen things happen in the last 20 years. I think it happened just after we graduated. We had national recognition, national kind of they moved away from the state boards, and they nationalized the whole profession. And obviously there's been the UWS program got shut down. The Lismore program opened up. We've seen changes there. We've seen an explosion in Melbourne and Victoria of osteopaths, and having them really expand out into other areas of healthcare other than just private practice.
Yeah.
So that's great. So we've seen what can happen when you have volume of practitioners out there. I think that's really good for the profession. And we've seen what can happen also when you reduce volume and the kind of stagnation that happens there. And that's what we've seen over the last 20 years. What do you see as some of the challenges ahead of us in the next 20 years? Hello, everyone. Just a quick break to give you some information on where to best find me. The first place is the private Facebook group called the Successful Practitioner Pathway. I've set up this private group as a place where practitioners can go and get tips and advice on how to best accelerate their practice and improve their clinical practice skills. The second place to find me is at successinpractice.net. That is where the Success in Practice signature program is housed. You can find more information about me and how I can best help you achieve success in your practice. So, the two best places, the private Facebook group, the Successful Practitioner Pathway, and successinpractice.net. I will link to both those places in the show notes. So for more information, please see the show notes. Now, enjoy, and back to the show.
So I was actually on a committee to talk about this, and it's interesting how
a committee for where? Sorry,
a committee to look at the future of the profession.
In what organisation?
As part of, it was a joint Osteopathy Australia and RMIT project.
Right. Okay.
And I was very lucky to be on that committee, and this is exactly what we were talking about. And it was pre-COVID, so some of the things that came up were things like telehealth. And we're like, oh, how are we going to do osteopathy telehealth? And then, of course, COVID, and we all learned how to do osteopathy for telehealth, or telehealth for osteopathy, or tried. And so sometimes you get thrown a curveball, and it's very hard to predict the future. I did learn that. I think I think, like you said, the explosion in Victoria has also seen osteopaths divert to other fields. And maybe it's okay to practice osteopathy in different ways. Because I am a dedicated manual therapist in osteopathy, and I think education and manual therapy are my two big things that I do. So I would be sad to see the bodywork side of things fall away too much. I'm not really helpful. I think it's a really good question, Sammy, and I don't think I have a very good answer for you.
Is it important that we protect, I guess, the foundations and then also the hands-on aspect of osteopathy?
I'm not a protectionist. So because I've learned so much from other professions, other body workers. I'm like, let's just all talk to each other.
Oh yeah, no,
You know what I mean?
that wasn't the essence of my
Yeah.
question. The essence of my question was, if we're osteopaths and we're practicing osteopathy,
Yeah.
should we at least make an effort to keep osteopathy in osteopathy? Like, are we
I don't know what osteopathy is anymore, really.
right?
So I think I'm a very competent allied health professional and manual therapist and physical therapist to some
Well,
extent.
what did you practice when you didn't know what osteopathy, or tell us about that? Like, okay, well, let's, if you don't know what osteopathy is at the moment, I mean, is it the principles?
I mean, not that I don't know what it is. Like, I think it's a really nice framework. It's one framework that the body is body, mind, and spirit. And
Right.
that could be lost, that it's biopsychosocial. So I wrote a blog on this as well. So
Right.
body, mind, spirit, biopsychosocial. So I think from the get-go, 25 years ago, when I stepped into the university, we were educated in a framework of the biopsychosocial model. And that's kind of served osteopathy very well. And
do you think that served osteopathy very well, or do you think osteopathy has served that very well? Because osteopathy has been around for a couple of hundred years.
Yeah, but
biopsychosocial model just came out about like maybe 10 years ago, And
well, the framework and the words, not 10 years ago, a long time ago, but not 200 years ago, sure. But I mean, I think that
like fascia was a buzzword, has become a buzzword now. And it's osteopaths have been talking about fascia for a long time.
Well, I mean, even before, I would say that osteopaths cared a lot about the nervous system and the nerves. And I've got I've actually been, this is how much of a nerd I am. I've been to Kirksville University.
Yes, I know you have.
Yeah, and there was a beautiful, amazing photo of a dissected nervous system. And I have it framed on the wall in my clinic. And so, yeah, like osteopaths were pretty early to promote the importance of the nervous system as well. So I just think
it just feels like they're playing catch up to us, Angie, rather than
times. I think that they're nice shoulders of giants to stand on, in terms of.
So should we be cutting those? Should we be cutting those shoulders down? Should we be kind of trying to trim down the giants, or should we be trying to reinforce them, or at least not kick them out of the house?
Well, I mean, it's like it's some of it's dogma and not helpful. But I think it's just like you grow it. You pull the things in that work from other places and reinforce. This is where science is good.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that we're kind of opposed to science, but osteopathy seems like it's a thought process rather than an application. So I mean, you can apply osteopathy, but in a nutshell, it seems like a philosophy and a thought process that then you take tools from other people. You can use, and you can use tools from other. You build your toolbox as a practitioner. Yes. But that thought process, you go and apply it, and it works fantastic.
100% agree with you. Like, it's a framework that you can work in that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then you'll kind of know what to do.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
it's stood the test of time. As a framework, I haven't I don't know yet if there's anything that's really, and I've thought about this. It's not like I'm just saying it because I'm an osteopath. I've really put it to the test. I don't think there's anything out there that comes close to kind of matching it in terms of philosophical underpinning and as a framework for people to kind of live by in terms of medicine. But well, I guess moving forward, what do you think, in the short term? What would you like to see happen in the short term? What would be some wins for osteopathy maybe in the next 5 years?
Some wins?
Yeah, like, what can we celebrate in the next 5 years?
Oh, I mean, that's a hard question. Well, I think there's a win because we just had a new university course open up in Western Australia. That's
I heard about that.
Thank you very much, Osteopathy Australia, and
My-
whoever's working on that.
My information is that might be ready to go in 2026.
Amazing.
Maybe that's my information, but
what's a win? A win would be helping retain practitioners. I feel like, especially in Victoria, there's been an attrition, as there has been across healthcare, that people find this really difficult. It's a difficult profession sometimes. And so a win would be having some kind of mentorship or supervision to help people reduce burnout and that kind of thing. Probably that would be a win, I think. Keep people in the profession, make it sustainable for them, and try to help people, try to help the consumer.
Yeah, I think the same things that we've always wanted to do. I mean, more access to hospitals. I'd love that.
Would you?
Yeah, I'd love to be in. I'd love to have osteopaths in hospitals. That will just kind of sweep up some things that get left behind because people don't think about them.
Well, maybe it would be more like it would be nice to have access. So Mark has a patient who's in hospital at the moment, and he's just like, I just don't feel that it's appropriate for me to go in. It would be very difficult to organize that. And it's not appropriate. And so that's kind of sad, So a win might just be access.
Yeah, access. Well, that's the first step, right? Access to that. Obviously, we've had that announcement about Western Australia, so we'd love a course down here in Sydney. That would be.
Do you really think it's ever going to get off the ground?
Oh, look, look, Angie, it's obvious with the Western Australian news that universities are still looking for courses. They have their businesses at the end of the day. They haven't shut up shop.
They can make money from it.
Oh, look, they can make money from it. So I think we just have to pull our heads in and get our acts together and put something together that's going to entice them to, have us on board.
I think it's a lot of people trying.
Hopefully. Okay, so look, this has been fantastic. I've enjoyed it, and it's always great to have a chat to you. And I know it's late, but I am gonna.
Flown by.
It's flown by, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I know. This happens. Everybody says this. It's just flown by, and they're almost anxious about it at the beginning, and they're saying, "I don't know what I'm going to talk about for an hour," but it goes.
No, you ask good questions.
Well, I try to prepare, but I feel grateful for the people that I talk to when they segue into little rabbit holes that are interesting. I like that. So anyway, I will keep talking to Angie on the other side of this. But for the public viewers for the podcast, this is where we say goodbye to Angie. Angie, thank you very much for taking your time and giving back to us with some of your expertise and your experience. For everybody, that's it. And thank you, Angie.
Thanks, Sammy. Bye.